A car battery usually lasts between 3 and 5 years before it needs replacement or leaves you stranded. However, to avoid being at the mercy of your starter battery, you can test your car battery with a multimeter long before it comes to the end of its service life. This way, you arrange for a replacement at your convenience and are not stranded somewhere inconvenient. In this video, I'll show you how to easily test a car battery with a multimeter at home, DIY style. I'll also show you how to check an alternator to ensure that it's charging the starter battery right. I'll also add how to check the starter to ensure it's not drawing more current than it should from the battery. Now, let's get to business. To check a car battery with a multimeter, you will need two things: a multimeter and the car battery to be tested. The multimeter can be a cheap affair or a fairly expensive one. It will make no difference. It just needs to have the ability to check DC voltage and resistance. If you love my unit, which can do a lot of other DIY things on both a car and at home, I'll leave a link to it in the description below so that you can check it out. On the other hand, the battery can be in or out of the vehicle. However, for a wider array of testing options, it's recommended to have the starter battery connected and in a working and functional vehicle. To get the most accurate results when testing the car battery with a multimeter, it's best to clean the battery terminals and ensure that everything is clean, nice and snug. If you're dealing with corrosion on the battery terminals or have loose-fitting battery terminal connectors, you may have incorrect or misleading results. The prep out of the way, let's get onto the first test. Typically, for a functional battery that has been recently used, you will want to first of all power on the headlight's full beams for a few seconds and wait for about a minute or two in order to clear off any surface charge before taking the reading. To test a car battery with a multimeter, you first of all need to determine the voltage such a battery is holding. To check this, connect the probes of your multimeter to the unit and touch the red probe to the positive terminal of the battery, served with the red supply line or cap and positive sign. Touch the other probe, the black one, to the other battery terminal, marked with a negative sign and served by a black supply line or cap. A good starter battery should indicate a DC voltage charge anywhere between 12.4 volts and 12.7 volts. This is a territory of a good functional starter battery that is holding the charge and can easily start your vehicle. A DC voltage charge of between 12.0 and 12.3 volts indicate a weak starter battery that will need recharging if it's to work well and start the car without any challenges. However, any car battery reading that stays below the 12.0 DC voltage mark will typically need replacing, especially if the battery wasn't run flat. The DC voltage is a superficial test, however. It doesn't say anything about the battery health or its ability to hold a charge. It only states the current charge on the battery, which can change in a second or less. Let's now move to another metric, the cold cranking amps, or CCA for short. Cold cranking amps measure how much a starter battery's voltage drops under the extreme load of starting an engine. This is the ultimate real-world test for a starter battery's health. Here, as with voltage, the higher the value, the better. To test a car battery for cold cranking amps, connect the multimeter, positive to positive and negative to negative with a starter battery. Dial the multimeter to DC voltage and crank up the vehicle. If you are alone, set a camera to record the lowest value that the voltage drops to during the crank, or better still, get an assistant to crank while you remain at the hood and take note of the drop directly. A healthy battery shouldn't drop below 10 volts before picking up again. If you have a drop less than 9.6 volts, you must begin to think of a replacement, or that battery will fail, especially as the winter sets in. For reference, if you have a dip that falls between 11 volts and 10.5 volts, you have a healthy battery that will serve even through negative temperatures without issues. 9.6 volts to 10.5 volts is acceptable, though not ideal. Anything between 9.5 volts and 9 volts is critical, which is code name for a battery that is starting to become unreliable. And anything below 9 volts is a fail, with the battery needing immediate replacement. Instructive as these values are, they hold little meaning if the alternator isn't working as it should, which is why you should also check the alternator too anytime you are up to testing a car battery with a multimeter. With your multimeter set to DC voltage and the red positive probe of the multimeter placed on the positive battery terminal and the black negative probe of the multimeter placed on the negative battery terminal, start the engine or get an assistant to crank over the motor. The voltage reading should immediately jump from 12 point something range to between 13.5 volts and 14.7 volts. A reading of less than 13.5 volts indicates an alternator that isn't charging the starter battery properly. Such an alternator may be failing and will need replacement. At the moment, understand that it won't be able to adequately charge the starter battery and also power the vehicle's electronics. Conversely, a reading of above 14.7 volts indicates an alternator that is possibly faulty and is actively overcharging the battery. Such an alternator equally needs urgent attention, as it can easily destroy the starter battery and mess up other electronics that rely on it to function right. Beyond testing an alternator to see if it's charging the starter battery and powering the vehicle's electronics right, there's yet another test you can perform as far as the starter battery and multimeter are concerned: the load test. The battery load test puts pressure on the battery and sees how such a battery behaves. This test is important because while a failing starter battery may work fine without load, once loaded, it may fail suddenly and without notice. With the engine still running, turn on the headlights to high beams, blast the AC on the highest setting, turn on the rear defogger and start up the radio. The voltage reading on the multimeter should drop, but ever so slightly, and with the engine still running, should not be below 13 volts. Any reading below 13 volts indicates a battery that will struggle when loaded. Such a battery should be replaced, or at least plans to change it should be underway and in earnest. These tests have so far ignored the starter. Unfortunately, a bad starter can draw excessive current and mess up almost all the other results, causing false positives or negatives where not needed. To avoid this, you should test the starter too independently. With the multimeter dialed into DC voltage and the probes connected to the starter battery, positive to positive and negative to negative, have someone start the engine while you watch what happens to the readings on the multimeter. A healthy starter should not cause the readings on the battery to drop below 10 volts during the split second of cranking. If the readings drop below 9.6 volts on a healthy battery, the starter may be dragging, struggling, or failing. Unfortunately, testing the starter this way isn't foolproof, as a bad battery may bring out similar symptoms. Success here requires first making sure that you are dealing with a great starter battery to begin with. This is why a dedicated battery tester, complete with starter, alternator, and load testing features, is recommended. A good unit like the Ansel BA101 is highly recommended. The good thing with a battery tester such as the BA101 from Ansel is that it takes all the guesswork and need to memorize values. If your starter battery has issues, it will indicate the issue right away and offer suggestions. If the matter is a failing alternator, you'll also be notified. Simply, same with any of the numerous other metrics the tester is designed to measure. I'll leave a link in the description below for you to check it out if you're interested. This isn't goodbye. Catch ya on the next one.